Have you ever wondered if keeping your job while building your business means you're not fully committed? Maybe you keep hearing advice from your peers or from your coach that you need to quit your job, go all in, or burn the shit down. Put yourself in a position where you have no choice but to make the business work. And maybe part of you has wondered if those people are right? Shit, I know I did. And there was really a time when I questioned whether keeping my job meant I was playing it too safe, or maybe if I believed in myself a little bit more, then my business would grow, or I should just take the leap. But the longer that I build this business, the more I believe the complete fucking opposite. I don't think I need to create financial chaos in my life to prove a version of success or ambition to anyone else. And right now, keeping my job is actually helping me build a stronger and more sustainable business. So if you're building a business while working a day job and trying to figure out what the hell you're supposed to be doing, both without burning yourself out or burning your life down, this episode is for you. So by the end of this episode, I want you to understand why keeping your job can actually give you an advantage while you're building, how I'm using mine to create a more sustainable business, and the evidence that I need to see before I'm willing to even take that leap. And more importantly, I want you to walk away questioning the idea of what someone else's version of success looks like for you. Because my goal isn't to quit as quickly as possible. My goal is really to build something strong enough that when I do decide to leave, I'm not creating another job.
Booked and unbothered, confidence and courage, mindset and messy little moves of entrepreneurship.
Welcome to the Booked and Unbothered podcast, the podcast for high-value women navigating mindset, marketing, and messy middle moves of entrepreneurship. Here is where we turn clarity into cash and presence into power. I'm your host, Yarden Carroll, mother to 3 amazing boys, wife, storyteller, and brand engineer. Mic on? Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Booked and Unbothered podcast, the podcast for high-value service providers navigating marketing, mindset, and messy middle moves. I'm your host, Yarden Carroll, and if you've been listening for the last few weeks, this is actually the 4th and final episode in a series that I've been doing around building and selling premium services. We started out by talking about why high-ticket clients aren't buying and why trust isn't always the real problem. Then we went deeper into what actually creates the trust with a more sophisticated buyer, because another testimonial is not what's going to move the needle, right? And then last week, we talked about what happens when your marketing is actually working to the level of that buyer, but your business model doesn't support or sustain the demand that you've created. And I think this episode really brings all 3 of those conversations together, because I had to learn some of this shit the hard way. And it's one of the things that I know now that I didn't know then, that creating demand and making money, it can be easy sometimes. But when you're building it around your life, it's not always the case. It's another thing to build a business that can create demand consistently. But if you can't deliver because you have limited capacity or a faulty business model, then a lot of things need to be refined or recalibrated, all of the above, right? So right now, I really want to talk about why I still have my day job and some of the bad advice that I've heard over the course of the last few years of me building this business, and why I don't really listen to none of that shit anymore. Despite all the bad advice that I've heard over the last few years, I really want to explain how I got here. And I have to take you back to where I was a few years ago, and when I was building a different version of my business, especially different from the version that it is today. So I remember being a part of a mastermind group, and I was probably the youngest person there. I think I was the only Black woman there. And I was actually the only one who still had their day job. And I just want to be very clear about something, because I don't want to make the people that were in this mastermind room the villain. this story because they weren't. They were actually very forthcoming about their experiences, their losses, their successes. And this group, it was a phenomenal group, but I don't think that I was ready for the version of what success looked like. Not at this stage of my business, right? So people talked about what they had gone through to build these businesses. And some of the stories that they would tell me were fucking wild. And I remember some talking about divorce. There was a lot of bankruptcy, taking on a lot more debt. Some people were really putting themselves in these really difficult financial situations because they had decided that they were going to go all in and that this was going to be the thing that works, right? And eventually, some of them saw success, right? Not all of them, but some of them. And I remember listening to those stories and thinking that maybe that was just what entrepreneurship was. That was just a price that you had to pay. You go all in and eventually you'll see the success. And I remember around that same time listening to their stories and just struggling in my own skin, struggling in my own business. And I remember telling my coach that I didn't have the capacity to do all of the things she wanted me to implement. I had a job, my kids, my husband, and just that I was carrying so much, especially of the invisible load. And I remember her recommendations at that time was, oh, well, since you don't have the time, just invest in paid ads because, if you don't have time to do all that organic marketing. So I did exactly what she told me to do. I invested in the ads and I was trying to market, which I've told you guys this story before, that I was doing dental implant marketing. And at the time I was really over investing in my business and I was in a red. I wasn't making any money. And I remember on one of the coaching calls, she asked me specifically after, I think she was sick and tired of me just complaining about my limited capacity and me doing all of these things and it wasn't working. And I remember her asking me, when are you going to quit your job? And when I look back now, I'm like, man, what? Like, my fucking business isn't even making any money. And if I've been telling you I'm in the red and I have limited capacity and a big family that I love and adore who's depending on me, and your first question is going to ask, the first question you're going to ask me is when I'm going to quit my 6-figure job. Right. But at that time, I didn't really have a reaction. I didn't know how to process that. Right. And I remember thinking that she was right. I thought I was the problem. I thought that the reason I wasn't making any money, I wasn't growing fast enough was because I wasn't committed, right? And like most high achievers, that's what we do. We turn everything inward and it's all of our fault. And I was taking so many risks and nothing was moving. Maybe I was the reason, right? And honestly, I remember feeling like such a fucking failure. And I felt like maybe I never would be able to quit my job or grow my business enough to leave my job because the way it had been brought up on this call was that quitting my job was the only way to do it. And I wasn't ready to go all in, right? And I just couldn't do it. I know I carry the benefits. I'm a caregiver. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I've already overinvested in my business. I can't imagine going to the man that loves and adores me and supports me and just telling him, oh, I'm going to quit my job for a business that's not making any money. Right. And the financial responsibilities. And then there's all of the invisible shit that comes with being the person that everybody depends on. And I remember clearly articulating that to her. So when the answer was still essentially, well, just quit. That was the only way you're going to see success. I realized immediately, like, we're not aligned. I didn't have the language for it then, but I do recall starting to pull back. I really stopped showing up to these calls. And looking back, there were other red flags that I had ignored, which I'm sharing all of this candidly with you because I don't want you to do the same thing, is that I was running paid ads without having a dialed in offer. This was before I started marketing to healthcare providers and dental implants, right? I had taken somebody else's offer that wasn't mine. It was validated for her. She had the audience. I didn't. And this is something I can see so clearly now because of what I've done in my career for the last 16 years, just being in the utility industry, being an electrical designer. When you're designing something, you can look at it from Street View and from Google Maps, and you can look at all of the records, and you can have the whole damn design worked out and mapped out in your head before you even get to the job site. And then you fucking get there, and then you notice something is off. There's something underground. There's an obstacle in the way. A fucking tree's there, right? Or somebody's property line that you have to cross. And the thing that looks straightforward on paper is never like that. It's never straightforward, right? Now you got to design a job or design and finagle around this obstacle. And sometimes you have to approach things from a different direction. And that's what I had to do. That's what I had to do with my business, right? So, and I do know in my industry, you can't just say, well, this is always how we've done it, so we're going to do that here. No, you could put people's lives at risk by doing stupid shit like that. But you really have to do your due diligence, and you have to look at the conditions you're actually working with, right? And I wasn't doing that in my business. I was really trying to fast track success by borrowing somebody else's blueprint ideas and templatized version of what success looks like and skipping the foundational elements of what it takes to build a business, right? And now that I think about it, their success was not my success. Their capacity wasn't mine. The conditions of their life, they were not my conditions, right? And now that I think about it, just because a strategy had been validated for them and worked for them, it did not mean it was going to work for me. And that's a lesson that I had to pay for, literally, in thousands of debt. And eventually, I do recall when I started selling to healthcare providers and I started marketing for them and helping them, I started to see things differently. And instead of me just selling marketing to them, I really started to notice that I was selling them a solution and solving a problem that was really expensive if they didn't solve it. So at that time, I think the package for building that backend system was $8,000 for the package. And then there was an additional $2,500 minimum for ad spend. And when I got a couple of those clients under my belt, I really started to understand something that completely changed about how I thought about high ticket services. And these doctors and these healthcare providers, they had a costly and urgent problem. And they were so busy working in their business that they didn't have the time to build the marketing systems, to generate the leads, or do everything that was required of them to grow because they were too busy in the business. But the business still needed all of that, right? So the problem had a cost that was attached to it. And once I understood that, my momentum really started to shift and I really started to make money. And I remember that I started to make enough money to pay down all of this debt that I was overinvested in. I had a 20K month, I had a 15K month, and I had some really good months, right? And last year was a really high grossing year for me. But here's the part that doesn't, I don't share this publicly, but I am now. But shit, after some of those really good months, I had some months where I didn't make shit. Sometimes back to back, I didn't make $1, right? So yeah, I could take a screenshot and say, hey, this is what I did. Look what I did, 20K. But you think I was going to take a screenshot of the next month when I make 0? No. But I could not point to a predictable pattern and say I knew exactly how to do this again next month. And it's not because I didn't know how to make the money, because I had got a hold of it. I knew how to do it. But what mattered to me and what was happening at the same time as me having these high grossing months was that I had a family. I had 3 boys. I had my husband work long hours. We were traveling back and forth for them playing AAU. And there were months when I had more capacity and months when I didn't. And there were games that I missed because I had client work. And my kids were so used to me being there and they were so used to me showing up. And then there were times when they would ask me, Mom, are you going to come to my game? And I could not find the words to tell them no. So my business took a hit because at some point I really had to ask myself, what the hell am I building this business for? If I'm making a ton of money, but I'm not present for my family, and I'm creating all this tension in my house, or my husband needs me and I'm unavailable. Like, what is this? What is the point? What is the point of this? So I just, I would see these highs and lows, and I didn't feel like I was creating the freedom or the impact that I thought that's the real reason and driver behind me starting a business, right? I started to feel like I was creating another job, except this business, I ain't getting any PTO. And that was the real problem with the business model that I had. And I figured out how to make money. I figured it out, but I did not figure out how to make money consistently without me being the bottleneck. Two different accomplishments that I wish that I could say that I've mastered. Right. But if I could choose presence and make inconsistent money, or I could push harder and make more money during certain months and create this tension in the life I supposedly built this business around, neither one of those was acceptable for me. So I had to burn that business model down. I had to burn it all down. And for a while, I didn't even know I was going to do it. I think that I just felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I had to take time off. I took 6 months off of my business. I purposely did not publicly market my business. I did not look for new clients the first 6 months of this year. And I didn't really start marketing my business again until July of this year. And not only that, I said last year I was going to start this podcast, and I didn't start it, but I figured, hey, if I'm going to go back in and start my business, I might as well launch my podcast. I needed that 6 months. I needed that break because I was not interested in taking the same business and putting a different brand on it or putting a different spin on it and calling it a pivot. I really had to burn that business model down. And when I went back to the drawing board to think about the business model that I wanted to design, I thought about all of the experience that I had. Who am I actually qualified to help? What problem am I actually qualified to solve? And what am I fucking good at? Not like, what can I, because, I could do some paid ads. I could do all of that, but I didn't even like it. If I'm being honest, I didn't like that. Right. What was I really good at? What did I have experience in? What was I really good at? And what did the market actually value? I really had to sit back and ask these questions. And just as importantly, what kind of business can I build within the capacity that I already have? Right. With my life in mind, with my kids and my husband in mind at the forefront. And because I learned something from all of the things that I did and all of the investments, that now shows up in how I work with my clients, right? And I teach them about building their business around their capacity, building their marketing around their capacity, building their business around their life, right? And I also teach them about recognizing costly and urgent problems that they can solve and still charge a premium price point. Most of my clients still have their day job. And if they don't, a lot of the times they have been conditioned to market their business and their expertise, but not articulate it in a way to where they associate it with the opportunity costs, right? Nobody really teaches that. And a lot of the bad experiences that I've had early on, a lot of the experience that I have in my day job have allowed me to not only bridge a gap to solve costly and urgent problems. I'm teaching other people how to solve costly and urgent problems, how to recognize and how to articulate that, right? How to challenge the status quo and business as usual and what that looks like, and not just making up some shit and throwing a bow on it and a high price tag and telling them that this is what they do. No, this is lived experience. This is real life. And I learned that through trials and tribulations. And none of this sounds good on Instagram. Nobody's going to publicly tell you about these things. But I'm talking about solving problems where if people, whether it's B2B or B2C, if they leave it unresolved, there's costly consequences. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't teach you about high ticket, high value service. It's not about, I decided I'm a high ticket coach, right? I'm charging $10,000. Okay. Congratulations. No, that's not what this is about. It's really about what is the problem you're solving. and what it is, the problem that you solve. How is it that you challenge the status quo? How is it that you can associate that with and tie it to, if this problem is not solved, what is it actually going to cost me? What's the opportunity cost? And that's where I think a lot of high ticket conversations get messed up. Premium clients are not just buying your offer. They're borrowing your judgment. They're borrowing your confidence. They're borrowing your belief. And this is another reason why I need to keep my job, because it's an advantage for me, because I don't need every sales conversation to turn into money. That's changed the way I sell. The way that I was sold to in the past, baby, it's created so much trauma for me that it has changed my entire perspective. My sales process I am not about overcoming every objection. I will listen to what somebody tells me. I can listen, I can decipher, and I will use discernment about the person that is on the other end of that line and on the other end of that call. I am not trying to overcome every objection, because every sale and all money ain't good money. Not to me. I'm asking better questions and I'm listening to see what they're actually saying, even silent objections. And in my mind, I'm asking questions about, are they qualified to work with me? I come to the call with qualifications too. Do you have the right problem? Can I solve that problem? Are we aligned on values? Can I actually help you? Are you in the stage of business to where this makes sense for me? Because I know what it feels like to invest in something when you're not ready. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to be sold to when I don't even have that problem, because a lot of the times when we're in the thick of it, we can't even articulate what the problem is that we have. So we entrust that the person on the other end of that call is going to be able to decipher or tell us what the problem is, right? And looking back, I shouldn't have been in that program that I was in or that mastermind. And it's not because she was a bad coach or because that program didn't work. I wasn't even in that stage of business. I wasn't even ready for half the shit that she had going on. That was for people who were ready to scale. And if I told you the types, I was working with 7-figure business owners. I was in the room with 7-figure business owners. And I wasn't even making that much. Little old me. I still had my day job. I was barely scratching the surface, making any money in my business at the time. Rubbing elbows, sitting next to people, kikiing, having a good old time with 7-figure business owners. But what I know now is that I was not ready for that solution. I was not ready for that program. It was not because that program did not work. It did not work for me. And I wish there had been a level of discernment from me when I got on that call. So I'm not interested in overcoming every objection just to close somebody or just to make a sale. Because what's the fucking point of making the sale if you can't even get the result for that person? And that's not the type of business that I want. That goes against my values. And if having a stable income gives me more room to protect that standard, then baby, so what? I will keep my job and I will keep my standards. But I also don't want this episode to sound like, keep your job and take your sweet ass time. No, that's not what I'm doing. And that's not what I'm telling you. Because I work 40 to 50 hours a week in my day job. And right now I probably spend about another 10 to 15 hours a week on my business. But the business I'm building now looks completely different than it did last year. And for context, that's why I created this podcast, because this is long form content. And I use this and I repurpose it. I repurpose it into blog posts. I repurpose it into memes and long form content or long form posts and carousels, instead of me constantly having to sit down like, what the fuck do I post today? I don't have that much time, right? So I really want to build a central body of work and how I think and let a lot of that do the heavy lifting. So I probably spend about 6 to 7 hours a week in my marketing, but I'm consistently having regular conversations with people. I'm building relationships that really matter. I'm not hiding behind automation like I was before and pretending like I'm talking to humans. I'm not doing that. And right now I'm spending probably about 4 to 5 hours delivering for my clients, because right now I have a group program. And because that cohort model allows me not only to teach people together It allows me to coach them together. It allows me to let them learn from each other and to build that community without me having to repeat myself 17 times on 17 different one-on-one calls, right? And I'm not just telling people to go do this and go do that. I really want them to understand at a deeper level that what they're doing, why they're doing it, how to do it, and what evidence they need to validate if it's working or not. We call those KPIs, key performance indicators, because that's how I've been taught to think in the industry that I'm in, right? Is to do what works or do it until it works and then, make pivot. And that's the business model that I'm building right now, right? A lot of the systems do the heavy lifting. I'm talking about a proven process where the long form content doing more of the heavy lifting, the community for the cohort that I built doing more of the heavy lifting, and a lot of my intellectual property, a lot of the things that I failed at, I'll learn from. That does a lot of the heavy lifting. And mainly that's so I can be present in my life, that I can be present with my kids and my family and my husband. I can run my business. I can help my clients. And when my kids ask me to close my laptop, I close my fucking laptop. Because ultimately this year, that's what capacity means to me. It's not doing less because I'm incapable of doing more. It's because I don't have the capacity to do that. So I really have to I have to recognize that I need to design the business so everything else doesn't require me at the same time. I can't do that. I can't go through those ups and downs again. And right now, that means keeping my job. And I've earned the degrees. I've earned the experience and expertise. I've earned the respect. And I've built skills there that translate and directly influence the type of strategy and the business owner that I am, right? And I think too often as high achieving women, we discount all of the things we know and all of the things we have and all the experience we have. And it doesn't matter if it's in life, in business, motherhood. A lot of the things that we can do and have done, that's lived experience that translates into business. So the systems, the analytics, the problem solving, looking at something from multiple vantage points and doing my due diligence before I make a decision. That is what I'm good at. That is what I love to do, right? Especially in industry where people gatekeep. And I'm not one to gatekeep. I'm not one to be afraid to build publicly. I'm not one to be afraid to tell you about my losses or my flops or none of that. I'm not afraid of that. But at the same time, understanding that what works on paper might fall apart when you get into the actual job or the business, you got to be able to understand that. And I'm really not ready or willing to risk it all because somebody on the internet said that I should. I'm not doing that, right? I've also built a lifestyle. I built a life that I love, that I adore. So what do I look like throwing all that away because somebody else's definition of entrepreneurship or success said that I should, especially when the business hasn't shown me consistent 5-figure months yet. It hasn't done that. It didn't do that last year. It didn't do that. And I damn near hit what I make for my job. What? No. So I had the 20K months, 15. Then I had zero. I don't know how many times I got to say zero, right? So to me, all of that is data. All of that is evidence. It's not evidence that I can't build. It's evidence that I'm not done building. So I cannot just quit just based on bad advice, right? So really my job is building the bridge, but all of that data, I had to go back and look at it. I had to go back and refine it. I had to go back and recalibrate and define what success looks like to me and to my family, right? And right now my job is funding the business while I build something that can eventually replace what I've created or designed over the 16 years, right? I clearly built that. I was strategic about how I built that. And because I have kids and because I have my family depending on me and a husband who's been phenomenal, who has supported me through all of this, building that bridge matters to me. What type of wife and mother would I be if I said, fuck it, I'm just going to leap off the bridge or leap off the ledge because somebody on the internet told me to? No, I don't know. I don't need to leap. I have strategically built bridges my entire life. I have done that for so long, but I don't want somebody else using this episode to justify sitting on their ass for 6 years saying, well, Yarden said, just keep my job. Keep my job as strategic. No, girl, no, don't put that on me. Your job can give you the money. It can also build a really comfortable hiding place. And I have had to have that conversation and check myself on that too. Am I building a business? Am I actually selling? Am I actually marketing? Am I actually getting my offer and my services in front of new people? Am I creating something for the sake of it? Or did the market tell me that this is what they need? At the end of the day, you have to collect the evidence. The evidence will tell you if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. And am I making the right decisions? Or am I endlessly preparing because my paycheck has created this safety net? And I think there's a thin line between honoring your capacity and avoiding discomfort. And only you will know which one you're doing. And I'm not interested in using my job as an excuse not to build. I'm using it to build better. I'm using it to build a more sustainable future, right? And I don't have some cute, sparkly glitter date on my calendar saying by, I don't know, the end of 2027, I'll be a full-time CEO. I don't have that yet. I do know that I would love to have that, right? But I think too many times we have outsourced our decision making and our authority to the internet and to fucking ChatGPT because they love arbitrary deadlines almost as much as they love burning and canceling people. But for me, I really need the numbers to make sense. I need consistent high earning months, not one $20,000 month, not one 15K month that lets me post a screenshot on Facebook. No, I need to understand the pattern. I need to understand the evidence, and it needs to be backed and real demand. And the real demand is there for what I'm selling, what I'm offering, and I need it to be documented. I need to know where my next client is coming from. And I need to be able to understand what marketing is creating that quality conversations. And I also need a business model that does not require me to sacrifice my family. And that's the standard. That's the standard that I am putting out there. That's the standard that I'm building. It's the demand, it's the consistency, it's the sustainability. And it's not because of some slogan. I need that. I need that because of the season of business that I'm in, the season of life that I'm in. I'm too old to be staying up and be working 60 and 70, 80. I don't have that. I don't have that time. My kids are too young. I need to be present. And making money is not all there is. I don't have enough proof and I don't have enough evidence back to tell me that it's safe enough to quit my job. I would love to. I will at some point if it allows me to. But that's what I'm building. I'm building the demand. I'm building the sustainability. I'm building the consistency because I know what I can carry. And I also know that I do not want to keep measuring my success against people who don't live my life. They don't carry what I carry. But if I don't know if the revenue that these people are posting, I see screenshots all the time. People posting screenshots of how much they made, but how much is that? How much of that is profit? Let's be real. I know a lot of people who aren't nearly making as much as they say they are. They're not nearly as successful as they pretend to be on the internet. So why the hell would I use somebody else's highlight reel or their level of success as a measuring stick for what my actual life is like? Shit, maybe I'm on page 10. Maybe they're on page 50. Fine. We still in the same book. And that's the thing. I'm not afraid or uncomfortable with saying I'm in the messy middle. I'm not afraid of publicly claiming I failed and I've lost or I've done this. But guess what? I still got my job. I'm not afraid to say I built something that made money. And I'm not afraid to say I burned that shit all the way down either. That's part of building. And this has changed how I think about who I learn from, who I take advice from. Because honestly, I can't take advice from somebody just because they've made more money than me. That's not enough for me anymore. The standard is a lot higher. The bar is a lot higher. I need to know, do they understand the life that I live? Do they align with my values? Do they understand the nuances of what I carry on a day to day? Have they solved this problem for somebody like me? Are they listening to what I'm actually saying? Or are they just trying to fit me into whatever templatized group that they have? Because I learned what happens when you don't ask questions. I've learned what happens when you don't use discernment. I learned that. I refuse to work with people who can't tell me what problem it is that they're experiencing. I have learned to ask better questions to diagnose problems from people who I want to work with or who need services that I provide. Definitely know everybody with money is not qualified to work with me. Having the money is not a qualifier for me. I mean, you got to have some money, but that's not the only qualifier. I need people who have the problem that I can solve and who are ready to solve it, who are willing to invest, who are willing to do the work, who are committed to doing the work, because I'm committed to being their guide. And that's better for me. That's better for them. And I literally had to do this work in the 6 months that I took time off from my business. I had to burn it all down. I had to do the work. It was very hard work. A lot of people are unwilling to do that work because at the end of the day, when I clearly defined what type of business I wanted to build, it was to make impact. It was to create freedom. It was to get results, and it was to create a legacy. And I'm not in the game of collecting coins and collecting clients. Honest to God, I'm trying to get people results. So no, I'm not quitting my job to prove I'm serious about my business. And it's not because I don't believe my business could be my full-time gig. I absolutely do believe it can. But right now, it just doesn't make sense. I literally built this business because I wanted to create wealth, I wanted to create impact, and I wanted to create freedom. And there's no way I'm going to measure my success on how somebody else lives their life, period. I have 3 kids dependent on me. I have a husband and a partner who has supported me through multiple degrees, career. I have a life that matters to me. I have a life that I love. So I'm going to build the bridge. And over the last 3-4 episodes, I talked about what a trust recession is. I've talked about what it means to build demand, what it means to build a business around your capacity. The reason I did that strategically is to let you know that if you are currently in the messy middle and you are building a business while you still have a family, while you still have your day job, you cannot measure your level of success against somebody else's. Honestly, I did not build it so unpredictable revenue could run my household or build this financial chaos. That's not why I built this business. And I refuse to take the leap without building the bridge. Honest to God, I damn sure do not want to leave one job to create another. I know I went off on a tangent, but okay, friend, I really want you to remember that there's more than one way to build a successful business. And the way you build yours has to make sense for you, and it has to make sense for the life you had actually lived. You don't have to quit your job to prove you're committed. You don't have to manufacture financial pressure to prove how ambitious or none of that. But you do need to use the stability you have to build the evidence. You have to start there. You have to ask yourself different questions, better questions. What evidence do you need before you can make that step? For me, it means demand, it means consistency, it means sustainability. Yours may look different than mine, but you got to decide it for yourself. You got to define it and decide it for yourself instead of letting somebody else decide it for you. Okay. And if this episode helped you rethink what going all in means or what it's supposed to look like, please subscribe so you don't miss another conversation, because around here, we're going to keep it real about the parts of building a business that these people not showing in these internet streets. I can assure you, all of that is not profit that they posting. I'm building a business around my life. I'm not building my life around my business. This is really about me building something that I can actually hold and sustain. And if you're building a business, whether you're in the messy middle or you're trying to figure out what needs to change in your offer, your marketing, your positioning, so you can build something sustainable, listen, I got you, boo. Book a call. The link is going to be in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, please make sure you follow the podcast, subscribe, leave a review, share this with somebody who really needs to hear it. Okay. And you can also join my newsletter called Off the Mic. The link is going to be in the show notes. Honestly, I'm going to talk about things that I don't talk about on this podcast, the strategies, the things that I had to shift, the lessons behind the lessons. But ultimately, my goal for you is to really stay booked and stay unbothered, especially by these people who are pretending. Okay. Live your life, build your business around your life. All right. Stay booked, stay unbothered. Until next time. Bye.